apologize, please. No, why don't you die for me? I'm in the king, really rough things. Give me that diamond ring. Get on your knees, apologize, please. No, why don't you die for me? I can go, but you drop medication. Late at night, I can deal with everything. Every night, you can make me let go. And if it goes, that's what do you feel?
So, no one's in? Nice. Okay, I will wait 5 more minutes, then I will start anyways. Okay, let's get this started. I don't wait any longer. Okay, let's get this started. What is going on? So maybe some of you will join later. I don't care, but let's get this started. Today we are doing a preset tutorial working from scratch, from start to finish, and I will try to get some kind of a faded, moody look, but also with some vibrant colors and to, how to say it, yeah, to get this fall vibe done, but with punchy colors. So I will start with this one here. Not sure, maybe this one or this one. Let's start with this one. It's a little bit more simple. So at the beginning I always try to work with the exposure, but just a little bit, not too much, because I will fix that later after all the changes I've made during the whole process. So for this shot, if we look at this one, it's kinda dark, but it's okay, so I will go with a little bit of a brighter one. Maybe, yeah, this should work fine. Okay, so I don't touch the contrast at all, because I work with contrast mostly with the tone curve, mostly. And if I need a little bit more of contrast, I can fix this later on with the contrast slider here. So first of all, no touching the contrast, but now we are coming into our highlights. And if we look at this image, you can see there are many bright areas we could push, but I lose a lot of details. So what I'm trying to do here is I lower the highlights and I work from there with my whites. Sounds kinda weird, but you will see the point later on. So let's get down to the next one. It's the shadows. The shadows are kinda good, so the image is quite good balanced. Maybe down here we miss a little bit, but we could get this all back, yeah. So no problem with this. So I bring them up quite a bit. So let's say maybe somewhere around, yeah, 75. 75 should be good for now. So it's a little bit of a back and forth process, but now 75, and let's set the highlights to a -75. Okay, so far so good. Now we come in here to our whites, and the whites are just, as the name says itself, it's pushing our whites in the image. So every color has a white in it, or kinda a white. It's everything between black and white. So now I drag this one to the right to get a little bit more of a brighter look. So I could do this with exposure, but exposure would affect my whole image. I don't want it, I just want to bring up the whites. So let's try that. Okay. And as you can see here in the top corner, right corner in the histogram, if this one pops up, this white triangle, you're burning out some areas in your images, but it's just the lights from this tram in the background. I don't care at all. So as long as it isn't too much, I give a shit about that. So, oh sorry, I touched the wrong one. So I bring this up a little bit more. Yeah, kind of 50. 50 could work. And now I'm doing the opposite with the blacks. So same process here, bringing them down. So this will also darken this area again from his pants, but I will work on that later. So I'm just trying to get the look done, the basic look that I want, with just these sliders here, with the top sliders. Everything else with contrast and so on, or contrast in detail I will do with the tone curve. So let's bring the blacks down. Maybe that's way too much. Maybe to minus 20. And if you double click on the slider, you will reset your adjustment. So just double click, leave your mouse where it is, click again, and you can jump back and forth. You don't need to hold Control set or anything. Just double click and it's resetted. Okay, maybe a little bit more. Minus 30. Yeah, this minus 35. I go with that. For this kind of look, I will push my texture just a bit, maybe 10. No, let's push this even further. Don't care too much about, so yeah, 50 to get it more crispy. Okay, so let's say a plus 50 for this one, and I'm working on a preset from scratch, so all I do here is trial and error. I have no guideline or anything, I'm just doing this with guessing, so don't judge me. The next thing is clarity. I'm not a huge fan of clarity, to be honest. Most of the editing I do, I use clarity a little bit, but not above 15. So that's the point where I stop. I never used it above 15. Never. So these are all the presets I've done so far by myself, and there is not a single preset by clarity is above 15. And the reason for that is it kills your image so much in color information and in contrast. So if you take a look at the histogram here, and if you push the clarity, you can clearly see how your tones getting pushed to the side. So all your midtones are crushed and everything gets to the kind of darker area, shadows or blacks, and to the whites or highlights. That's not good because you lose the color information and the highlights and the shadows. So we want to keep that, right? So let's push this back. Maybe we could try it to the negative side. Yeah, minus 10. So, and what you see here is just with the adjustments from a little bit of exposure, highlights, but there's no color grading or anything done yet. So it's just a few simple sliders taken left to the right and so on. And to me it already looks not bad, but we can push this a little bit further. Trust me, we can. So I would leave that now for that. I would say maybe, yeah, let's add a little bit of vibrance. I always do that. Vibrance is not the same as saturation. Vibrance is, in my opinion, the better way to work with kind of saturation, because vibrance keeps an eye on your skin tones and saturation not. So saturation pushes all the colors to its limits if we drag the slider, and vibrance is doing this to colors that are not that dominant in your image. You understand? I hope so. So if you take a look at this, look at the skin tone. It changes the skin tone a little bit, but not too much. And that's why I recommend using vibrance instead of saturation. Because we can also add saturation with our contrast. So contrast always adds a little bit of saturation to your image. That's why I prefer using vibrance, pushing the vibrance up, and mostly taking saturation down. And I can do everything else with saturation, with contrast, or the tone curve. That's why I'm not touching this or push it to the negative. So for this shot, I would say, because I want punchy colors, as I mentioned before, so let's set this, I don't know, it's not too much of a difference, more in the background, because this jacket is already very dominant, so you won't see too much of a change with vibrance in the jacket. As you can see, a little bit, but not too much. So I would go a 25, and I put saturation to the exact same amount but in the negative space, so minus 25. And now you get this look. So the color is still here, but it's very, how could I say that? It's desaturated, yeah. So next step, right into the tone curve. The tone curve is not too hard to understand as soon you understand it. So right here so this is like our histogram. On the left side, on the left down side here, we have our darker tones, the shadows and the blacks, and right up here there are our bright tones, our highlights and the whites, and everything in between there are our midtones. So if you change this here, we have here the adjustment, and if you put this, I don't know what this icon is, yeah, down here you have these 3 little sliders, and if you move it upwards, it already shows you where are your shadows, where are your darks, the lights and the highlights. So this in here, darks and lights, these are our midtones, but don't work in this mode. It sucks, you don't have that much control that would you have in point curve mode. So this is the, I don't know the name at all, so let's see, what is this? The parametric curve. Don't use it. So let's try this. So I'm darkening my image now in the darker tones, so I push them down, maybe a little bit, and if you hold Alt or Option on Mac, you can do fine adjustments. So if you press Alt and you click on this little button we actually created here, you can drag this very, very, very fine. So my mouse is a little bit broken, so it always deselects, so let's try. Okay. So, and what I really like with the latest update of Lightroom, or I don't know if it's the latest, but in the last couple of updates they added the numbers. The numbers, they were not there before, or I was just blind and I didn't see them, but it's so much better to work with now. Because if you're doing adjustments here in the red, green and blue, you get the exact same amounts of adjustments without going back and forth 10 times and trying to get the same spot where you was in the green or in the blue channel. So much easier. Okay, so let's do this here in the tone curve now. I'm going to drop the slider from the shadows or the darks to darken my darker areas in the image. And same here for the highlights and the whites, I'm gonna raise them. So it's a very simple S-curve. And now I wanna try to get kind of a faded look into my image. That's because, as I mentioned before, I wanna have a kind of faded, moody look to the image with vibrant colors, and that fits somehow into in our actual season, the fall season. So I'm gonna bring up this left top, so the left button right here. These are our blacks. This is the darkest point of our image, and that's actually set to 0. So if we raise this up, it cuts the dynamic range of our image, and we lose details in our darker areas, so they are just faded and blacked out with no information, and that's how you create that kinda moody, faded look that you see many times on Instagram. I'm not a huge fan of that, but I also want to create a preset on my own for this, and you will also get this preset for download later on, so no worries about that, and you can do with this preset whatever you want. So let's raise this up, and I'm always, since these numbers are in Lightroom, I always take a look at the number. So let's see. If I bring this up maybe to a -15 or so, and by clicking this little icon here, you can turn your actual editing on or off. So as you can see, this is without the tone curve, and I just did a slight adjustments, putting a little S-curve in there. So again, with the tone curve, without, and you can already see this kind of faded look in his pants and at some darker area in the image here. So let's bring this back down. Yeah, so we can push it to the extreme just for example, and you'll see what it looks like, and that's something, yeah, you see very often on Instagram, and I'm not a fan about that because that's way too extreme, in my opinion. Of course, it's all about taste, but that's a way too extreme. So let's bring this down right here, right down there. That's where our black tones start. So that's the information we have. If we push it further away or higher, we cut somewhere in here. And if we push the slider to the right, we cut off all the information in the image that is in this area. So this information is now gone. You can also do the same with the highlights, but we are doing it now just for the shadows or the black area. So let's bring this back down, and I would say something about 20 and 10. Okay. So I'm fine with that. I don't touch this any further, and as you can see, with the tone curve we brought back a lot of saturation in the image. So before I put this on -25, and just for example you can see what this does. Just take a look at the jacket, and now -25, desaturated, and now we are coming back in to the tone curve, but doing adjustments to the whole image with just a few simple clicks, and boom. So in my opinion, that's a very good starting point. Yeah, we are losing detail, but that's what I'm looking for, this preset. And I hope you can understand. So if you got any question or anything, just write it down. Let me know. I'm always looking at the chat, but nobody's typing, so seems a bit quiet. Okay, so the tone curve almost done, and I set down the highlights and the whites just a little bit. Normally it's 255, 255. So I bring it down to just 250. Just a bit, not to burn out any in the image. Okay. And that's almost half of the edit. Almost. Now we come to the most exciting part, and maybe it's probably the hardest part for me. And that's because I'm colorblind. So I'm red-green colorblind, and skin tones are maybe the worst for me to do. And I think if you take a look at my Instagram, link is down below, you can also see that the color tone of some of my street shots are, yeah, so skin color isn't correct. But I don't care, because I can't correct it in Lightroom. I know the process how to do it in Photoshop. There's a a math formula you can use to get your skin tone always correct, but for street shots I don't do it. It's too much work for me. So I'm just creating my presets, doing a little bit of editing until I say, okay, I'm fine with that, and boom, done. So not putting too much time or effort into something. I did that before, maybe 1 year ago when I did landscape, but that's another time. I don't want to talk about that. So let's jump right into the HSL slider. So that's hue, saturation, and luminance. Hue is the color itself and how it appears. So all these sliders we have in here are representing our reds, oranges, yellows, and so on. So by moving a slider, one of them to the left or to the right, you get your color will shift towards the direction you put it, right? So if we take a look at this jacket, it's somewhere between orange and red. So if I put this orange slider to the left, we get red. If you come in and push this red slider to the left, we get this pinky look, okay? So what I'm trying to do is I take a look at the original file, and the question is now, what's the perfect color for this jacket for the final edit? So the process now here is looking at the specific color and working on that color to get this color correct. If this color is done, I move to the next one without touching anything. So now I'm gonna take a look at this jacket and the color orange. So let's see. I don't want to push the red to the left, of course, because it looks just crazy. So what I do, I drag this a little bit more to the right to make this orange much more pop, okay? So let's see, maybe 35. And as you can see, okay, not too much at the face right now, but as you can see, we have now here plus 35. But if I change the orange, it will also change the skin tone. So in Lightroom, skin tone is 99% orange. Keep that in mind. So if you change orange, your skin tone will change too. For example, if I put it to the left, the skin gets kinda weird. So that's something I'd be very careful with. I'm not touching it too much. Maybe a little bit more to the yellow side. Yeah. Okay. Short drink. And guys, if you have a question, just type something in here. I'm ready to interact with you. So no worries. Wait, I missed something. Where's the music? Just a second. Okay. Okay. Fine. Having 3 screens is making me dumb. Okay, so back to the edit. So I just did a slight adjustment to the orange because I always recommend doing adjustments on the skin tones with radial filters. It's easier, and don't change the color orange too much in your shot, or do it later on in Photoshop. But for this preset, we are only using Lightroom. So I keep the settings now. We can do some further edits later on. So the yellow tones, of course, here, his gloves. Some kind of weird gloves. Almost look like fingers. Okay. Is it green? Huh. That's kind of green. Yeah, as you can see, I'm colorblind. But it helps using the sliders, pushing them extremely back and forth to see what kind of color it is, if you are also colorblind. So here we don't get too much of a change, so I will leave them. Maybe I push the yellow back to the orange to a -45. The greens, I leave them. I will take them out later on. I don't want greens now in my image. Aquas, I push them more to the blue side. So let's get out of here. So I don't need this comparison now. So let's see. Yeah, aquas are mostly reflections, mostly. So you won't have too much of this color in any shot unless reflections. So as you can see, it doesn't do too much to the shot. Maybe a little bit down here and down there, but it's very subtle. So I leave that by that. And next step are the blues. Let's see. Yeah, it's just a mask. No, I leave the blues and the rest of this. So I don't touch this. Saturation, I don't touch it yet, so I jump right next to the luminance. And now, that's very important. Luminance, or wait, someone asked something. Yes, that's a good question, and it is. So it's absolutely possible, and with the latest update it's maybe one of the easiest ways ever to do. So they implemented a new tool that's from Photoshop. So I will show this now to you, because maybe some of you are interested in, and let's do this real quick. So first of all, go up here to your radial filters, or you can use also a brush. Let's use a brush. It's that big pen tool here. And next step, just come in and say, yeah, so the settings, don't do any settings, it's okay. Make sure auto mask is on, and click once on your on the spot that you wanna edit. So as soon as you click, this little dot will appear, and now you have the option to choose range mask. What this does is you can choose of different settings. So in this case we have color and luminance. If you pick color, as the name says, you can pick some different areas from the area you want to edit, and take some samples, and Lightroom will only look at these colors. So everything you're gonna mask in your shot will be masked that has the same color. Anything else won't be affected by the mask at all. So we have here this little thing, the color range selector, and if we hit this little button, we can click on our jacket, let's say this one. Now Lightroom knows, okay, we are looking for this color, and if we paint now, let's see, okay, paintbrush is on, no it's not. So you also have to click here again to deselect the selector, and now we can paint on your on our jacket or the area we want. Before you do this, hit O on your keyboard. This will show your mask, your mask overlay. By clicking Shift and O, you can change the color. As you can see, it's hard to see, but it's green, it's white, and red. I go with white because I'm colorblind. So now we made the selection, and if we paint now, you can see these stripes here aren't selected. So the tool actually looking for the color that's matching with the one you took the sample from. And that's very powerful. That's one way to do this. Let's get back a few steps. What you can do, come in here again, click the selector and hold shift. By holding shift you can add more spots from the same color, so you can also choose darker areas, and your selection will be much more accurate. So I picked, let's say, a mid-tone. Let's pick some brighter area and always hold shift. Let's take a darker tone. Okay, maybe a tone from here. Maybe a very dark tone there. And I think you can take 5 or 6 samples. Let's try this. So if you take too much, the first sample you made gets erased. So let's see how many we can do. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now let's try this again. We paint again, and now this is a way more accurate. So before we also had some of the gloves in, because the darker color, because it's reflecting, was kinda in there in the sampled area. But taking more samples will get you a much more accurate selection. So let's do this here real quick, and then I will show you the tool that you were asking for. I'm doing this now just for showcasing, so not really accurate at all. And also here, yeah. As you can see, it's orange and skin tone, so it also picks up on the skin tone, but we can fix that by just pressing Alt or Option, and then maybe lower your brush size. You can do this with your mouse wheel, and then just paint it out. Okay, so now the face isn't selected, and let's jump into the powerful tool we have. So by pressing O again, you remember the overlay, the mask overlay, just press O and it's gone, and now we are here with our selection without any overlay. So now the tool that so many asked for, and it's finally here, is this hue slider. So you can change any color that you want. So with this trick, just take a sample, mask your area, do some fine adjustments, and then come over here. You can do this also for graduated filter and radial filters, so no worries, it works for those three. And now if we change this slider to the left or right, oh yeah, it changes the color of the jacket. And it works very, very good, in my opinion. And as I said, the selection wasn't very good. But if you do some fine adjustments and you could say, hey, let's mask out some of this area, or come in and repaint it. If I paint here, as you can see, there is no change because there's a different color. Same over here, no change because it's a different color, so Lightroom only picks the color you selected. You could also say, hey, maybe the bike that's in the same range, it gets changed, but not something else. Not the pants, not the gloves. Very powerful. So I hope you understand. So if you have any question, just ask, or if something is unclear. Let's undo that real quick. Oh man, I made too many brush strokes. So there we go. You're welcome. So where did I stop? Yeah, luminance. Okay, let me check this real quick. And always look at before and after. So if you don't know how to get this kind of view on your screen, by pressing Y on your keyboard. So if you press Y on your keyboard, you get maybe this view, or you got down below, there is, it's this one, cycles between before and after views. And there are a bunch of them. So you can switch through them by clicking this little tiny button. So you will have before and after, before and after. That way, clicking again, before and after with just this line, before and after, sideways. But I prefer this one, because I always want to have, I want to see my original file and the new, or the preset I'm working, or the edit I'm working side by side. So I can pick on different things that maybe don't work and rework them. That's how I do it. Maybe you want to do it in a different way, but that's all user preference. Okay. I'm thirsty. So, luminance. Maybe some of you have heard about the weight of color. If we put two circles side by side, and one circle is, I'm quickly looking for an example, wait, just to let you know what this can do to your image. Let me Google this quickly. I'm too lazy to open up Photoshop. Well, it doesn't matter. Let's do this real quick, because why not? So the weight of color. If you look at let's say a circle that is black, and this circle is that big, and there is another circle that is that big, but this circle is maybe a light orange. Which one is heavier in a psychological way? So I would say the smaller one, because it's black. Do you get the point? So let's see what I got here. Yeah, just something. Okay, so yeah. So we got this circle, and now we're gonna drag in, I don't know, let's say this one, why not? And take down, no, make this even bigger. That's too big. Okay, let's say 1K. No, that's 800. So, in a psychological way, this circle is much heavier than this one. And that's because it's darker. And you can use this technique to balance out your image. So, at the moment we have dark pants, and that's it. So we don't have too much of dark colors in our image. Of course, in the background maybe this guy's here, the silhouettes with umbrellas, but overall that's our darkest tone, and that's where the most weight of our image is. So let me show you this. So if we push up the reds, because now it depends where we want to put some weight in our image. If we put the weight all over here, the image wants to go to the left, and it doesn't feel right. I know it sounds weird, but it is very important. So I would say we brighten up this sky, and we will turn down later on everything else, just to give the background and his surroundings a little bit more weight and make him a little bit lighter. So this makes him stand out a little bit more in comparison to the rest of the image. So let's bring this up. The oranges, also the reds, yeah, also the yellows, because those are our primary colors. Now let's pull back the blues. That's something I forgot, I'm sorry. For this preset I take out almost all the blues, so let's go back to -80. I don't touch the rest. So let's come back here. Sorry, also the greens. I said I pull them out later, so also for the greens -85. Good. So no any edits in saturation, only pushing down the greens, pushing down the blues, because they don't work too good with the edit I'm trying to go. Okay, so I don't touch the greens at all, I leave them. I mean, we have a little bit of a leaves in the background, but as you can see, I want to bring them down, because if I take them up, no, it doesn't work with the image. So bring them down to get it more contrasting. -75. Aqua wouldn't do too much to our image, so I'll leave it by that. Now it gets interesting. The blues. The reason why I push them back is I pull up the luminance much more to make the blues lighter and more shiny, but without having that blue tint in there. So if we push this back, also the mask has this kind of blue, I don't know what this is, dirt or something, but it gets this kind of bluish tint into the image, and I don't want it. Or, oh, tint is the wrong word, tone. So let's take out the blues. Yeah, that's good. I leave the purples and the magentas right now, don't touch them yet. As you can see, there is a little bit, there's a lot of them, okay. Leave it by that. So that's the basic editing I would do for the hue, saturation and luminance now. Yeah. No further editing. And now it gets interesting, because split toning is probably the most powerful tool you can use in Lightroom. What is split toning? Split toning itself, it's kind of weird to explain. So it's not like your colors getting shifted or something. So it's more like another layer that gets added to your color to match the color you have chosen in here. So that's the color palette you could use, simple RGB. So I would say I show you an example. By pressing Alt or Option and clicking this slider, you get a preview how it would be with 100% of this color. So by dragging this now, as you can see, it immediately turned red. And this only affects the highlights in your image, so not the darker areas, only the highlighted areas in your image. So for the highlight, and it was a rainy day, I would go with something, yeah, let's say a very light bluish color. And as you can see, you can create interesting stuff with this. So, but I'm just holding Alt, so it's still, or Option, it's still just a preview. So if I release the button, no changes at all, because we don't have set our saturation yet. So if I push the slider upwards, it fills up my highlights more and more. So the more I push this to the right, the more blue the image gets. So to pick a nice color, I would open up this. You just have to click one time at this little gray box, and then you can set your color. So moving this up will increase your saturation, and just left and right is the tone itself. So I would go with a very light blue, but with higher saturation. Okay, maybe like that. 186. Let's try 190. Yeah, 190. 190. So should the color be? And I'm also doing this for the shadows. Now you could say and use complementary colors and say, hey, I've got a blue, so let's use orange or yellow to get this kind of poppy look you see most of the times on Instagram, this orange teal look. I use them quite often, to be honest, but in a very subtle way, mostly. So if you take a look at my Instagram and scroll down to one of my first posts, they were very orange and blue. So I went to the extreme with the settings, and I had no idea what I'm doing, or maybe I didn't notice it. So use it properly in a lighter way. Don't do it too much, because it would just look wrong. Or if you try to do a cinematic look, yeah, try to shift your colors to maybe one side, because if we look at some movies or anything, sometimes they have color grading that is completely in the orange, where everything's orange or green or blue, always depends on the mood. But in photography, I'm looking on an image and not on a movie, so I'm always trying to find a balance between those two and give them kind of a cinematic look, but always very subtle. I hope you get it, what I mean. So let's see what we can do with the shadows here. Is the quality good enough? Because I got some weird errors here. I hope so. Okay, just let me know if something is wrong. But it should be back again, or not. Anyways, so with the shadows, same again here, pressing Alt, and it's the same process. So pressing Alt, we are only looking now at the shadows. As you can see, if we look at this darker area here or there, by pressing Alt, it gets mostly affected at this area. Of course, it previews 100%. 100% would affect almost your whole image. So just for a preview, press Alt or Option on Mac, and now use the slider again. But I'm not sure if I want to have this on the orange side, because it was a cool day. I would go with that again on the cooler side, but with maybe 198. Okay, and now I push the shadows just slightly. Maybe 15. So that's before, without split toning. Wait. So that's without split toning. With split toning. So as you already can see, highlights and shadows are now more on the bluish side. I leave it by that because now I do the color temperature of the image. Most of the people do that at the beginning, but as you can see I haven't touched this yet because I want to work with my basic color until I say okay, I'm fine with that. And then I can adjust my temperature to the point where I say that's it. And from there on it's a back and forth process, doing some fine adjustments to the image itself. But for me this process works at the best. So no, wait, what? Anyways, let's do the temperature. My brain. I had a full day of work, so I'm kinda tired. I was working until 7 p.m. Then I quickly went to McDonald's, what I usually not do. Yeah, put something up to eat, had a meal. Now I was setting up everything to put the stream together, and now I'm here streaming, and I also need to have a shower later on after this, so let's move on. Color temperature and tint. Okay, so all the adjustments I've made were with the basic image, with the basic colors, without any adjustments at all in temperature or tint. So everything I've made here was the basic color I was working with. So no adjustments, even in the camera calibration. So now I'm happy with the results so far. So if we look at the before and after, it also is much brighter, and it also looks, in my opinion, better. I got a little bit more contrast into the image, and I also brought up the jacket a little bit more so to make it pop, but it doesn't pop too much because the surroundings, they are still too bright, but we will work on this soon. So let's fix our color temperature because it's a way too warm in my opinion. So let's shift this slowly, and as you can see, the colors shift quickly. And be very careful with color temperature because you can quickly get weird colors in skin tones or anything. So for example, not sure if we can spot this here. Yeah, you can. Let me quickly brighten up his face. Okay. And somewhere around there, the skin color starts to get weird at some point. So I should dial this back. I would say 5,400? Yeah. I like that. I like it. So let's delete this radial filter, so because we're just working on the preset. And color tint, maybe a little bit, it always depends on your camera. I'm using an older Sony camera. It's I don't have it here. So it's the Sony SLT Alpha 57. It's a camera back from 2012, I think. 2012 or 2013. So I bought this camera. It was 900 bucks, and it was, back then it was one of the best APS-C cameras you can buy. It has amazing, okay, not amazing color science, it's Sony, but it has amazing features for a really good price. And I bought this camera and it's A mount. And maybe you guys know, A mount doesn't really exist anymore. So I bought this camera, and maybe a half year later Sony came up with, hey, look, we have the Sony A7 with E mount. And I was like, okay, everything's fine. They will work on more A-mount cameras. Sony said, yeah, we do. So shortly after the A7, they brought up another A-mount camera, and this was the last camera they made with A-mount. And I was like, yeah, they're still doing it. And I bought a bunch of gear, lenses, and so on. And I was like, yeah, I love photography. It's so fucking cool. Well, 3 years later, I was waiting for an A-mount full-frame camera. Nothing. Sony still said, we are working on it. We are making new A-mount stuff. Okay, the Sony A7 II was already there. And then I was like, maybe that was a mistake. Yeah, so now, about 8 years later, there is no new A-mount camera, and I'm pretty sure there won't be another A-mount camera. So I'm now admit to that I've bought a lot of gear for a camera and a mount system that died maybe a half year before they switched to another mount. And these were a few thousands of euros. So I'm still shooting with this gear. I haven't switched yet. I wanna switch to the new Sony series because I'm a fan of Sony. I love their stuff. And I'm just a little bit upset because they switched and telling the community we are still doing the old mount, we are still making stuff for this, but they didn't, and that's disappointing for me or for any other photographer who was like, okay, I stay with this mount. But I think I'm the last person who is still using this mount, so yeah, it's kinda shit. But all the shots you can see, I can't use any nice and fancy autofocus, so all what I do is shooting manually. I'm focusing manually every shot, every single time, because my autofocus is too slow to catch a shot like this. It's always jumping backwards and forth and doing weird things, but not keeping the focus on the subject. So everything I had to do is making every single shot by manual. But I love it, because I think if you shoot manually, you are much more into photography. You take your time with your shot, you're looking for your framing, your subject, you're doing all the kind of all the things in camera that you can do and still focusing manually. Or many other photographers I know just hold up the camera, push the trigger halfway, focus is on, click, photo is done. I can't do that, because every time I have to wait, I have to adjust, and if you're shooting on a 70 to 200mm lens, sometimes you can't even tell are you in focus or not, because the compression is so hard. Like this shot, it's on 2.8, so, and I took, I don't know, 2 or 3 shots of him, and while taking the shot I was adjusting to get this somehow done, and yeah, finally it worked out. But if you take a closer look, it's not 100% sharp, but you can fix that later on. So I don't care too much if any shot of my shots is 100% sharp, unless I'm happy with the outcome, and I like this one. So enough from my story now. Let's move on here with this. So I have changed the temperature just a little bit to bring out in a little bit, or to introduce a little bit more blues into the image. And as I mentioned before, I brought the saturation of the blues far down. So if I put this back now, the image gets much bluer than it should be. So let this sit back there, and I put up the blue luminance to make the blue even be brighter. Okay, and that's what happens if you put down this slider to the left Your image gets brighter. If you look up here to the histogram, it gets more to the right side because of the changes I've made before. So all the changes I've made are automatically affected by this slider now. And that's why I do it at the end. So I can control much more of my editing with one slider as I do it the other way. So maybe that makes sense to you. I prefer the process this way. Maybe I change the tint, but mostly I don't. Maybe. Okay, let's set this to a 15. I'm not editing too much in a tint. Okay. So, the preset is almost finished. Almost. As we take a look at our before, this was the shot that I took very flat lighting, but with a little bit of editing, and it's not too much what we have done here. We came up with a pretty nice image. So what I do now, because I don't want to lose this, if you want to do a preset on your own and you made all these settings, just come over here to the left side. So this is where all your presets are saved, right? And you have below your navigator, you have presets, and on the right side there is this little plus, add new preset. So I click on it. This little box opens up. So I personally leave these settings how they are because it's everything checked that has to be checked. If you're using filters, radial filters, graduated filters, don't put them in your preset because every shot is different. So just the current settings as they are fine. We got chromatic aberration in, lens distortion. It's not a must, but you can add it. Effects, yeah, post crop, grain, yeah, camera calibration, process version, and of course the edits we've made. So treatment profile, it's the camera profile itself. White balance, we did some white balance. Basic tone, these are the basic tone here. So exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, white and black clipping. So white and black clipping is this. Tone curve, we made some adjustments to the tone curve, of course, so check. We've made some changes to our texture, so texture is here. We did. We also changed our clarity for, in this case, -10. Dehaze, I haven't done anything with dehaze in this shot. Normally I never do anything with dehaze because I don't need it for my shots. I can do something with it, but not today. On another video maybe. Sharpening I haven't used, but I did some texture, and texture is also, let's say, the little brother of sharpening. And if you're using your shots not for printing and just for social media, Instagram, Facebook, or anything else, you don't need sharpening in your image at all. So maybe if your shot isn't in focus, yeah, you could do something, but mostly you don't need sharpening. If your shot is in focus, you are good, because there are many images on Instagram, they look over sharpened, and I show you what this looks like. So let's go down here. You can find sharpening under the detail panel, and if you import your image, it will automatically have some basic settings. So for this shot, Lightroom said, okay, sharpening is 40, by looking up to the sharpest spot on your image. So if we take this to 0, I can see any difference. Maybe just a little bit, but if you're using stuff like this for Instagram, you don't need any extra sharpening, because if you export it, it gets sharpened again if you check the settings. So sometimes if you look on Instagram, you see shots that look like this, and I'm not sure if you can see this. So let's push this to the extreme, where just sharpening is over the edge. This should be visible for you, and don't do that. Don't do sharpening at all. If you are using your shots for Instagram or Facebook, Twitter, or I don't know, whatever, don't do it. It just makes your image shit, or not pleasurable for your eye to look at. So I leave these settings right here, or sometimes I take it completely off. In this case, just I leave it how it is. So let's jump back, as I said, and we all were looking through this here. Color, it's all checked, it's all okay. So now what we can do, so I'm doing this preset for my newest preset pack that I will launch maybe in November. Hopefully I get it done. I have a group here, so that's down here. That's my streets group. That's the newest one. This is the latest one I put out, and now I name it, I don't know, street stream. Yeah, I will refine this preset for sure, but not yet. So it's a back and forth process. If I use it on another shot, maybe I do some slight adjustments to balance it a little bit more to make it usable for more shots than just one. You can't use this preset on a shot that was taken on a summer day, 30 degrees outside, pure sun. It wouldn't work. So this is a preset for rainy days. So let's create that, and if we look down here, it's there. So that's our preset now, what we have created. Wait. I hope I haven't seen this. Okay, I had the lens corrections. No, this always takes the lens correction that is in your EXIF file from your shot. So it doesn't use the camera profile from my shot, so it always looks up to your image. What camera did you use? What lens did you use? So it's just checked. I haven't changed anything here. Let's see, where are the camera calibrations? Am I dumb? So here, profile. So as you can see, I haven't done anything. So it's just checked. If you enable this, of course this will add your lens. As you can see, this Lightroom version doesn't recognize my 70-200 lens from Tamron. It's a 2.8. It's not in there. So I could search for it manually by clicking here. But Tamron namings are so weird that no. I'm not gonna look for this. Maybe I could find it, 70-200. I don't know. No, their namings are, I don't know what's going on in their mind, but, or who is telling them, yeah, we call it this because it sounds cool. It isn't cool, so I have no idea what kind of lens I have. It's a 70-200 f2.8. Yeah, it's a DI, but then I have no idea, bro. So mostly I don't enable profile corrections for the lens. Mostly I don't, because I shoot on 99% of my 70-200 lens, and as I mentioned before, I have no idea what lens this is in here. I have the package in my other room. I know exactly what's the naming what's on there, but it's different in here. I can't find it. So, but for your question, if I enable it, it takes the information from your shot, not from my shot. Okay? So, the preset so far is done. But now, as you know, a preset is a starting point. I don't use a preset, or I just put the preset on a shot and say it's done, because that's not how it works. So now we have the preset here on our shot, and this is where I do mostly final editing with radial filters, graduated filters. And for this one, I would say let's put a radial filter around him. So by just clicking here, this little radial filter thing, and you could also access it with Shift and M on your keyboard. So filter is done, and now make sure to uncheck this box and press O. Okay, let's set this to red again. So that's my selection. Everything that is red is in my selection, so I think you guys know how a mask works. So black conceals, white reveals. In this case, everything that is red is on a grayscale white. So if I put this down now, oh yeah, and that's where the magic happens. So I'm dialing back everything that's around him, because this was so bright in the image itself that this guy was kinda lost in the image, so he didn't stand out. It was kinda flat. And with this simple change you can quickly bring the subject closer to the viewer and direct him to the subject. What I do now at this point, so I'll leave it by that, I'm creating another filter, a graduated filter, and to get a little bit more dimension into the shot, because it still looks kinda flat. I drag a graduated filter from the bottom to the top, maybe like that. And again here, we are dropping our exposure. That's too much. Okay. And this is now kind of back and forth process. So with this technique, adding filters to the image, so graduated filter and radial filters, I'm trying to balance out the image a little bit more, because if everything is at the same brightness, it looks kinda flat. So what I do now, I bring another radial filter and I zoom out for just a little bit. So let's say 1.4. Now let's try. And I draw this radial filter outside of my image, but very big. So let's say something like that. Okay, I need to zoom out a little bit more. Bring this one up. Okay. And now we look at the image at this size. It's always good to zoom out and look at your image. How does it look if it's small? And you can spot very quickly something that isn't right. So in that case, the foreground is already okay. So it's a boring foreground, just a simple reflection of his light from his bicycle, and yeah, the midground is kinda okay, and the background is dark again. So it doesn't make sense in this way. So what I'm doing here is I'm brightening up the background. I'm brightening up and I'm brightening up. Okay, so. And now I need to zoom in and out and take a closer look. Okay. Still brightening up a little bit. Bring this up there. And by clicking this little icon here down below, it says turn off radial filter, but I haven't figured out a way to turn on only one filter. If you click this one, it turns off every filter you used, so you will see immediately, boom, every filter is off. So I still don't know how. Maybe if someone of you has any suggestion for me, let me know, because I have no idea how to turn off only one filter. Or maybe it's still not working in Lightroom. Maybe they will add it later, but at the moment it doesn't work. So that's before. So before we added our filters on your image, and as you can see, the light is coming, or it looks like the light is coming somewhere, yeah, from around here, but that's not how it is. So what I did, I darkened the foreground to lead the viewer more to the subject, and I brightened up the background, so to get the lighting more to my subject and also to the background, so it leads the eye through the image. And that's because the foreground is darker, and we already know color weight. The foreground is darker, the image is darker in the foreground, so it has more weight, and it soaks you in to the image. That's how I understand it. Maybe it makes sense to you, maybe not. So let's turn this back on, and it's still not good because this area here is just too bright. So let's see if we can change something in here. Yeah, now we are talking. So I brightened it up before, the exposure settings, right at the beginning as we started. So I took this to point 33, yeah. And I did this because if we look at our normal image, it was kinda dark and flat. So I just brightened it up to have a little bit more sense of what's going on in the image. And now, after all these editings, I put this back to 0. And you can already see now it's much more dynamic. It's dark in the foreground. The subject is, in my opinion, perfectly exposed. And it gets lighter in the background. So it looks like the light is coming behind him. So from behind towards us. And it looks like kinda he's riding into the darkness somehow, because the foreground is already darkened and the light from his bicycle is also shining here. So this makes, in my opinion, a pretty good composition of the shot. Just with playing around with simple filters only with the exposure. And not doing any edits here with color or contrast or anything, only the exposure. So, and that's kinda it. So what we can do next is just adding one more radial filter to the image. So we already have this one here, this little filter, and I made it like to darken everything of his surroundings, right? So for this next one, I duplicate this one. Now it's getting extremely dark because we have two of the same layers. Now click one of them and just drag it slightly down or up or to the side, wherever you want. Just so far you can click it. If they are too close to each other, you can't click the other one and you have to delete one and do it again. But this should work fine in my opinion. And now we come in here to the right side and we are inverting this. So what this does, it just inverts the mask. So currently the outside of this filter is affected. Now we are switching, just click invert. Now the inside is affected, and we are resetting our exposure. Okay, and what I do now, because I want to get this subject a little bit more to the viewer, just a bit more. It's already standing out very nice with the color and the sharpness. It looks quite good to me, but there is just a little bit that's wrong for me. So we inverted this mask, and now our subject is masked, and we are trying to fix a little bit of exposure of him. So on some areas it's a little bit too dark, in my opinion. So, and now really just some slight adjustments, not too much, because it will look very fast, very odd. Okay, so just try this. I'm trying to find a way to balance this a little bit more. Okay, shadows looking good. I'm turning down the highlights, because as you can see, the highlights are also brightening up everything around him. So let's bring them back. Yes, maybe somewhere there. Okay, now working a bit more on the shadows, because if I push up the shadows, I get a lot more texture into his pants. So let's, oh sorry, this was not on purpose. So as we look here far down, and I'm bringing back the shadows here. So now I drag them up, and that's just a great texture. It looks so interesting with everything in it. So by just dragging up the shadows a tiny bit, he looks quite more interesting to me. Maybe not to you, but for me it looks way more interesting now. So what we do now, I leave the settings by that, and I wanna paint out the mask around him. To do that, just click at the right top corner here on brush, make sure your radial filter is selected, and then come down here. Here's auto mask, so this will check your image in contrast, so it always finds a line between your darkest and your lightest point that's next to each other. Okay, so if we paint out with auto mask, Lightroom tries to find edges and just to remove the mask from the area we want to be removed. So I activate this now. As you can see, currently everything that's red is affected by these settings. We don't want that, so hold Alt or Option on your keyboard. This will activate your eraser tool. As you can see, here is erase. If I release my Alt or Option key, we are back here in A or B, and these are just the painting modes. So press Alt, you're in there, and now just paint. And as you can see, this works pretty good. Of course, here is a darker area down there. I have to be a little bit careful now, but it should work fine. Here again, yeah. And also here around him, maybe here it gets a little bit tricky. But Lightroom is doing a very good job with this. So masking, they improve this shit. Okay. Have I missed something? Yeah, here and there. And I always, so I have to say, really do it carefully, because if you're not doing it very, how to say that, if you're doing masking very quick and not very precise, you get some weird halos in your shots. So some bright surroundings around the corners of your subject, and this looks just wrong. So take your time and brush around, and you're fine. So let's take off the mask, and we're good. Now I want to show you the before and after, before we brushed out everything. You can see. Now it's much more on the subject itself, not his surroundings, because it looks wrong. That's always something I do on my shots. If I mask someone and do some specific adjustments, always try to mask around your subject very precisely, and you get good results. But just take your time. Don't rush it around and say, yeah, okay, it's fine, because it's your image and it's your work. And if you upload it to some social media platform or to your website or anything, you show the whole world your work. So take your time and you're good to go. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. We are pretty much done with this one. One thing I'm gonna do now, because I mentioned at the beginning I wanna have a faded look, so it's not too much faded now, so I push this to the extreme. Let's say, okay. Okay, minus. That's not bad. Okay. I mean, losing a lot of details now in his eyes. Looks a little bit weird. I take another radial filter just to brighten up his face a little bit too, or just the shadows to counter this problem. Okay, let's see. Yeah, have to do it that way. Just a little bit. And the music is already gone. Why is nobody telling me that? Okay. Yeah, not too bad. It's now kind of bright, but I'm not doing now adding another layer here and brightening up the eyes or something. It's a street shot, not a portrait, right? So you could do this on your own if you want, but it's not worth the effort for me. So I'm already happy with this one. Yeah, I like the tones. I like the faded look that we get here in our darker areas in the image. I hate this back of the car because it fucks up my shot, but I could get this out. A quick lazy adjustment brush. Sorry, not adjustment brush, clone stamp. Huh! Look at that. It works. Let's do another one here. Nobody would notice. I couldn't tell if there was a car or not. Perfect. So, looks immediately better. Absolutely. And that's always something. If you got something in your image that it's sticking out at the corner or something, just stamp it out, because this can make a huge difference. This little piece here was always distracting the viewer looking onto the subject, so you always wanted to know what is that, and my eyes were jumping the whole time while editing Always on this fucking back from the car. But now, where this little thing is gone, I'm really happy with this shot. And because we have made some simple adjustments now to our basic preset, there is also a way to update your preset. So if you made some changes and you are okay, I'm happy with this, but it could have a little bit more refining in it, so do some adjustments and then just come over here to your presets where you can select them. Our preset was Street Stream. Click on it with your right mouse button and simply click on Update with Current Settings. If you do that, this preset will be just updated with your current settings and you're good to go. Now this panel shows up again, using all the settings, of course we do, and it's done. And that's how I work on my presets. So actually I can show you a bunch of them what I'm working on now. They are not done, but let's see. So I would call this shot now, in my opinion, this shot is done. And maybe, how about you? Do you like the shot? Do you like the edit or not? Let me know in the comments. But I think it gets kinda this fall mood a little bit. Of course it's a rainy day, a cold day. It was about 10 degrees and I had no jacket. I was soaked. But it was a fun day. I was shooting for about 1.5 hours and I got 57 shots. So what I marked here, this was last weekend on Sunday. Shots that I can use out of 300, so it's not a bad number by focusing everything manual. I'm quite proud of me. So this shot here, 1 second, yeah, this was, I'm always doing some test shots at the beginning, and this was just a test shot for me to just see how are my settings and the camera and everything. And it turned out that this shot isn't bad at all. So I was like, hey, this is a very, very fall shot. And it's in the city, but the street there are lots of trees and many leaves here at the ground. And this couple. So I shot this with my 70-200, f2.8, ISO 250. And I worked on a preset for this shot. I can't use it on any street shot because, yeah, this is a scenery I don't have too often in streets. So if you take a look at street fall, it is, yeah. So that's the preset I've made for this shot, and I hope I can get a few more like this because I really like it. I like the tones in it, I like the vibrance of the colors and also the contrast. Of course, I'm losing a lot of detail here in the jacket, but this is all without radial filters and the further editing. So this is just the basic preset and I wouldn't do too much of adjustments in this one. Maybe a radial filter in here, brightening up the shadows not to lose everything of the dark areas. But doesn't do anything at all because maybe, yeah, or maybe some light, but not sure. It's always back and forth in editing. So what I'm doing now, I will upload this preset now what we have made. So as you can see, Street Stream now, if we reset this shot, that's the preset we created now. I mean, doesn't look bad, but we are losing a lot of detail of our shot. It's a very moody shot, to be honest. So let's have a look at some other shots we have here from the last weekend. What can we get? That's also with Street Stream, what we have made now. Let's see, what do we have? Okay, would be interesting, how would it work on this shot? Let's see. Yeah, as you can see, that's kind of a shot where it doesn't work too well, because there are so many colors in here, and of course darker skin tones always kind of different, but it's too hard on this one, in my opinion. Maybe I could use this one. Maybe. Okay, so let's see. This could be a cool one. That's definitely workable with this preset, what we have created today. So you apply the preset by just click on it and it's on with all the settings. So here are my radial filters activated. So as you can see, all the settings are in here now. And as I mentioned before, a preset is always a starting point, not a point where you say it's done. So this one is just too bright because of the editing we made so far. For this shot I would take it down. And you get a very moody shot, but it feels kinda green. Not sure. But the background there doesn't feel right, so I would have to do some further editing to get more of a bluish look to it. But just for example, it works pretty good. So normally I take, for one preset, 2 or 3 hours back and forth using it on different images, refining all the adjustments to get an average number for everything that works with, let's say, at least 5 or 6 shots without much more editing to get a good result. So this preset it's not too bad. So in my opinion, this preset works pretty good. Of course, maybe we get some weird halos around our subjects and shot is not quite in focus, but as I said, I don't care. But to fix something like this, as you can see, we have some weird black areas around the subject, like here. So that isn't in the original file, but you can see that clearly around the subject by simply creating a radial filter, drag it around your subject, make sure invert is activated, and just bring up your highlights. And it's done. Just bring them up to a specific point where it looks very balanced, and it's done. You are got rid of the halo around the subject. That's something I found out a few days ago. I always worked around with a radial filter and did some exposure adjustments, contrast and masked around, and was like, why it doesn't work. Still don't. Oh. Okay. My hard drive is full. No, it isn't. What was this message? Huh? What the fuck? I mean, I know my disk space is almost full, but this was a different alert. Okay, I don't know. So let's have a look at a few other images with this preset now. And I will upload this preset. You will find a link in my Instagram. So there is Linktree. If you click on it, I will put there another link for the preset, and it will be available for maybe until tomorrow morning. And then I delete it. So if you want to grab it, make sure to download it, because if not, you don't get it and it's gone. Will be released later on in my preset pack, but you can get it for free, so why not? Right? Oh, there we got a nice one. I like that. It's a brighter one. I really like the preset what we've made so far. So maybe some smaller adjustments, but overall it looks pretty good. And it's not too heavy, so of course it's a little bit of a fade in there. I don't do that too much, but to be honest, it looks very good. So if we use it on this one, come on, and just putting down the exposure. Yeah. Putting a radial filter in here, make it that big, draw it a little bit outwards, make sure this is unchecked, lower this one, because if your foreground is that bright, it's so much distraction for the viewer, you miss the subject completely, because this is always getting in your face and yelling to you, hey, I'm the foreground, look at me. Shut up, foreground. So I toned it down, right that, okay. Duplicate that again, bring it a little bit up, invert the mask, bring it up, and you draw the attention of the viewer immediately to the subject. And as you can see, that's almost an image that is done. So I'm happy with this. Okay, I will create now the link, or let's say I export this now. So export preset, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I put this onto my Dropbox. I will generate a new link and put this in my link tree. So Instagram on my bio link tree, and there will be in a few minutes the download link for this preset. You can grab it. Do you guys need an explanation for how to install a preset? But nah, you don't need it. If you need it, you can find millions of videos online on YouTube. So I don't write now an extra description inside that. Okay, so I just put the preset up and you get it for free. And thank you so much, guys, for joining me. Maybe next time you type a little bit more. Nah, no worries, doesn't matter, because I'm doing this just because I love it, and it was my first stream so far. Maybe some of you have seen I put a video in there. This was a year ago. Then I stopped because I wasn't sure what kind of stuff I gonna do, and back then I was in landscape photography, and now I switched this year from I guess in May or June I decided to try out street photography. I did 8 years landscape. I never tried something else, maybe some macro shots in nature, but it's kinda landscape but in tiny dimensions. So I switched to street photography. I'm also very new to street photography. It was not easy for me to get into this kind of art form of photography, because you're running through a street and taking pictures of people you don't know, and just they're looking at you, and it was so uncomfortable at the beginning. But now, maybe after the second or third time I was shooting, I don't care anymore. Of course, sometimes are people saying, hey, why have you taken a picture of me? And I would say, yeah, because you look nice. Mostly they laugh and say, okay. But I also had some other interactions with people where they were not that nice and were really had a hard conversation with them and then I deleted the shot. Okay, I'm fine with that, but because it's their right and I'm just taking a photo of someone. So it's always, if someone asks to delete the photo, do it. It's just a photo. Maybe it's a banger, and maybe it's the photo of the year that will get you, I don't know, tons of clients, but if you upload it somewhere or anything and the person will see it, you could get a lot of troubles. So always be kind to everyone. Take the shots you want, and if someone don't wants to be in the shot, delete it or don't put it online. For the sake of us, to be honest. And yeah, with that said, thank you so much everyone. Thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed this stream so far, and it was the first time for me. I'm not experienced with streaming and I hope the quality was good. I will rewatch the stream again by myself just to check the quality and to improve the quality of video and audio. So I don't have a microphone, or let's say I have a microphone, so this one, a Rode mic, but somehow it doesn't work as I want to when I connect it to my computer, so I need to readjust some things. Maybe I can get it work and get a little bit more of a clear audio the next time. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video so far and the live stream, and I will do this now weekly, every week. Not sure what we are making next Wednesday, or I'm still finding the right day, because Wednesday, I don't know, maybe lots of people don't have time on Wednesday. I only have time from Monday to Thursday, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday I don't have time for streaming. That's where I mostly do photography or yeah, being with my girlfriend, so it's a little bit hard on weekends, so I only can manage it to get it done during the week. With that said, see you next week. So next week, Wednesday, maybe a little bit earlier, so because it's already 11 PM and I still need a shower, and I will upload this preset now for you guys. You find the link in my bio on Instagram in a few minutes, and thank you so much for joining me, and have a nice evening. Take some good shots, and Friday is almost there, so hang in there and have a good day. Bye. Bye.